I would like to once again welcome all of you, especially my students, into the lecture session of this paper JCSTT 006, that is Fundamentals of Geology and Geomorphology. Today we will be having a discussion on the topic of the different types of rocks with special reference to that of the igneous rocks. But as all of us know that this particular rock is itself a vast subject in itself, may not be possible for me to cover up the igneous, sedimentary and metamorphic rocks on a single day, but we will be having successive lecture sessions on the topics as I have mentioned, and for that let's first start with that of the igneous rocks. So in the first very outset, I would like to define what does the rock word mean in parlance of the geomorphology or in parlance of the geology or geography is concerned. Basically, in terms of geology, rock is defined as an aggregate of one or more minerals or mineraloids. In other words, it is a naturally occurring solid substance or an aggregate that contains of one or more than one mineral. Now, based upon the formation or the way of the formation, rocks can be classified into three basic types. Number one, igneous rocks. Number two, sedimentary rocks. And number three is the metamorphic rocks. Now, let's consider the igneous rocks first. The word igneous has been derived from the Latin word ignis, which means fire. Now, this kind of rocks are basically formed by the solidification of the lava or magma, and they are also known as the primary or the first form rocks. When the magma is under the surface of earth, it is regarded to be as the magma, and when it erupts on the ground surface, it is referred to as the lava. So, in some way or the other, the term igneous basically refer to those kinds of rocks that are basically being formed by the consolidation and solidification of lava or magma either deep within the earth's crust or just on above the earth's crust. Now, what is the process in which this kind of particular rocks are being formed? Igneous rocks, as I have already mentioned, are basically being formed by the solidification and consolidification of the lava or the magma. So basically what happens is that when we move downwards deep into the earth's crust, it is found that temperature is rising. In a general sense, we can say that it has been observed that 1 degree Celsius of temperature rises on every 40 meters of depth. So considering this fact, we can say that when we will be reaching 40 kilometers or something like that, then we may even have a temperature of around 1000 degrees Celsius. Now at this particular depth, all the substances which are found over there should be in a molten state. A hot material or liquid rock is found to be existing below the surface of the earth, which is known as the magma, as I have already referred or mentioned, and when it is forced out on the surface of the earth, it is regarded to be as the lava. Now, as long as the physical and chemical conditions below the surface of the earth used to remain unchanged, magma used to remain in a molten state. But whenever this condition changes, the magma is changed into a solid rock that is referred to as the igneous rock. Now, classification of igneous rocks, basically based upon the way of its formation, igneous rock can be of two basic types. One is the intrusive igneous rock or inner action igneous rock, while the other one is the extrusive igneous rock or outer action igneous rocks. Now, intrusive igneous rocks. When the magma is crystallized deep inside the surface of the earth or deep inside the earth's crust, it is referred to as the intrusive igneous rocks. Usually, this type of rocks are coarse-grained because they are consolidated deep inside the earth's crust and may have a longer time to get cooled down or to get solidified. It does may be a region. Extrusive igneous rocks is basically formed when the magma is forced to ooze out of the surface of the earth or to come out of the surface of the earth under certain conditions and they are solidified over there. Now this kind of rocks are comparatively lesser crystalline in comparison to that of the intrusive rocks, and to be profound, this is basically because they usually get a lesser time to get condensed, so thereby leading to the formation of lesser number of crystals or lesser amount of crystals. Now igneous rocks can basically be classified under two broad categories based upon So as I am telling you, igneous rock can basically be classified under two broad categories based on its composition or based on the percentage of the silica and other things are concerned. So the two basic categories are classification based on the proportion of silica as the principal constituent, while other is the classification based on the solidification of magma. So at the first time, let's go into the classification based on the proportion of silica. On the basis of silica, igneous rock can basically be classified under two broad types. They are the acidic igneous rock, while the other one is the basic igneous rock. Now what are the acidic rocks? The acidic rocks are basically those igneous rocks which usually have a high percentage of silica. Now what may be the percentage? 2 or 2-3% or something like that, 2 or 2-3%. Usually this kind of rocks are light in color and comparatively do have less weight, and example may be given to the extent of rhyolite or to the extent of granite. This kind of rocks are basically, you know, the acidic rocks. Now what are the basic rocks? Basic rocks are actually those kind of igneous rocks which have lower proportion or lower percentage of silica. Now this kind of igneous rocks are basically darker in color and are usually having much more weight in comparison to that of the acidic rocks. Now in context of the example of the basic igneous rocks, we may mention the names of basalt, or we may mention the names of gabbro. So now based upon the consolidation or solidification of the magma, igneous rocks can be classified into three more types. One is the plutonic rock, other one is the hyperbasal rock, while the third one is the volcanic rock. Now what do we mean by the plutonic rocks? Plutonic rocks are basically formed when the magma is solidified deep below the surface of the earth. Now this kind of rocks are also regarded to be as the intrusive rocks, and usually this kind of rocks used to take longer time to get condensed and usually have larger crystals in comparison to that of the other types. Now what do you mean by the hyperbasal rocks? Hyperbasal igneous rocks are actually those kind of igneous rocks which are formed at some depth below the earth's crust, but at comparatively lesser depth in comparison to that of the plutonic rocks. Usually this kind of rocks are found in the veins or cracks or joints on the rocks basically. So this type of rocks in terms of the way of formation, if we are speaking, can also be regarded to be as the intrusive rocks too. Now volcanic rocks. Volcanic rocks are basically formed when the magma is solidified on the surface of the earth. Now this kind of rocks are basically regarded to be as the exclusive rock. Usually this kind of rocks are of basaltic origin, or this kind of rocks are usually can also be regarded to be as the basic rocks. An example of such kind of rock may be given to be as the basalt. Now based upon the description of the igneous rock, based upon the properties of the igneous rocks, the most important types of this kind of rocks may be as granite, gabbro, basaltic origin rocks, doleritic rocks, and diorite. Know some basic characteristics or basic properties of granite, or how can we identify the granite or field basically. Granite is usually the most commonest type of igneous rocks, and usually this particular kind of rock varies in a color between pink to that of the grey, and usually it is lighter in color, and this kind of rocks usually contains quartz, feldspar and mica. It is used as one of the most important building material for the purpose of decoration or monumental purpose or for the archaeological purpose. So it is most abundantly found. It is one of the type that is most abundantly found over the surface of the earth in terms of the igneous rocks, and it is used in terms of decoration or monumentation or for different other kinds of purpose like architecture and other uses. Now after that, gabbro. Gabbro is basically a close-grained, intrusive mafic igneous rock which is chemically equivalent to that of basalt. Usually the color of gabbro is dark and its color stretches from grey to that of black. Now this kind of rocks are basically used as a road material and also as a concrete aggregate. That is, gabbro can also be used as a important material or important constituent in terms of the road activities, road creation activities, or in terms of the concrete aggregate. It is also used in the kitchen as well as on the countertops. It is also used in graveyards. That is, I think all of you are well aware about the different kinds of funerals or the grave ceremonies and other things are concerned. The stone that is inscribed or installed over there may also be regarded to be as a gabbro. And usually the color of this kind of rock stretches from grey to that of the black. Now after that, basalt. Basalt is basically an example of extrusive igneous rock that is basically formed due to the action of the rapid cooling of the lava or magma over the surface of earth. Usually it is grey to black in color and has got fine grains, and basically this kind of rocks or the basalts are basically used as in the construction purpose, as building blocks or in groundwork. Now this kind of rock can be used in the construction of bridges or making the cobblestones or making of statues and other things are concerned. So after the basalt comes the dolerite. Dolerite is basically a mafic, hollow crystalline and subvolcanic rock. It is also regarded to be as a diabase. The color of this particular rock is usually dark brown. It is used as a crushed stone and for the purpose of preparation or manufacturing of ornaments. Now after dolerite, it is diorite. Diorite is an intrusive igneous rock. The color of this particular type of rock stretches from grey to that of dark grey. It can also be found in black or bluish grey color. It is an extremely hard rock, and its hardness allows it for the purpose of polish or in purpose of durable finished work. It is basically used for polishing and for other durable kind of works also. Now after the diorite, now let's discuss in brief the basic chemical composition that is found in most of these igneous rocks. In terms of the igneous rock, aluminum oxide or Al2O3, that is the chemical formula, usually being found to constitute something around 10 to 20% of this igneous rock. After that, silicon oxide, that is SiO2, in terms of this chemical formulation, that constitutes 40% to 75% of each rock fragment. And finally, metals like that of the calcium, magnesium and ferrum constitutes 10 to 15% of each and every rock fragment. Now, what are the basic properties of these igneous rocks? Most of the igneous rocks are very important, but plutonic rocks having high crushing and shearing strength. So this kind of rock is used most satisfactorily in comparison to that of the other rocks types. That is one of the important property. But the other important property is igneous rocks are basically used for the construction of building, road, bridges, or as in certain to some extent as gemstone or in the graveyards or other purposes are concerned. Now in the last but not the least, before going into the discussion of the sedimentary rocks and the metamorphic rocks in my next class, I would just like to brief you or provide you with a brief insight into the concept of rock cycle. Now what does the rock cycle means? Rock cycle basically means a level of equilibrium and its maintenance between the different types of rocks, as I have mentioned, in terms of formation, that is the igneous rocks, sedimentary rocks and the metamorphic rocks. Now this particular rock cycle used to guide the interrelationship between the different rocks on one hand, as well as the different geomorphic processes or the agents that are shaping up the different kinds of rocks, either eroding them or leading to the formation of a newer rock type. That is basically the weathering and erosion I am speaking about. Now this is a diagram. So in this particular diagram you can see that the basic rocks that is found over the earth's surface is basically, or the primary rock is the igneous rock. Now igneous rock, through the process of the weathering and erosion, is gradually getting fragmented in forms of sediments. Now these sediments are basically being lithified and consolidated in beds to form the sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks, as we can see, formed as a result of this the lithification and consolidation, we are getting the different kinds of metamorphic rocks. Now metamorphic rocks is basically the transformed form or the changed form of either igneous rock or basically the sedimentary rocks. Now when this igneous rocks reaches deep inside the earth's crust, these particular rock fragments are melted owing to the intense pressure and temperature of the upper layers. Now this particular melted materials or molten materials gets consolidated deep inside the earth's crust again as magma, and again this particular magma are oozed out either beneath the earth's crust or above the earth's crust to form the igneous rocks. So I think that you will remember during my previous lectures in the concepts of geomorphology, I have once said that geomorphological features can neither be destroyed or not be created in totality or in a full way. So let's understand this particular notion. When the igneous rock will get sedimented or will get fragmented, this particular fragments of sediments will consolidate itself or will get deposited, followed by lithification and other things in successive grades to prepare up the sedimentary rocks. Again, sedimentary rocks are metamorphosed due to the heat, temperature or other conditions to form the metamorphic rocks. Now metamorphic rocks are again getting molten up or again are found to be existent in different molten situations, thereby leading to the formation or generation of the different kinds of igneous rocks. So in a gist, we can say that rock cycle demonstrates the relationship between the three major kind of rocks, and it is powered by the internal heat of the earth as well as the earth's momentum and energy from the sun. It involves processes on the earth's surface as well as that of the interior of the earth, and finally it connects the hydrological circle with that of the tectonic circle. So with this I come to the conclusion of this particular session on igneous rock, and our next class will be on 27/4/2020 on the different concepts of sedimentary or the types of the sedimentary rocks and metamorphic rocks, and how can we identify this kind of rocks in the field. Still then, I would like to wish all of you to have a very safe and pleasant stay. যদি আমি বাংলায় বলি, সুস্থ থাকুন, ভালো থাকুন, জয় হিন্দ, বন্দে মাতরম।